Today we get to look at one of my favorite things and talk about real estate prices versus gold. And so we have my handy dandy long-term chart of real estate prices versus gold. I'm going to walk you through this chart, why it's important, why I like it so much better than just a real estate price chart. And then I also want to focus in on 2 years and show you that in 1986 and today in 2022, we actually have the exact same price in gold to buy a house. And so that's just really cool. So I have a bunch of numbers I'm going to walk you through in comparison. But just to start out, the reason why I like this chart so much is that real estate prices, if we just look at a chart of that versus dollars, it essentially goes straight up with obviously a dip at the end of 2008. You get that crash. But pretty much you have just a straight up chart. And so it gets really hard to figure out when to buy something when it goes only straight up. And so essentially what you'd say at that point is it's always a good idea to trade your dollars for a house. And that's why I'm a big believer in real estate. And I think real estate is a really smart purchase. But I also think there are better times and worse times to buy real estate. And so you have to find other ways to figure out when those times are, because you can't find the crash in the straight up chart. It just goes straight up and then all of a sudden it crashes and you're like, well, there was no like in between level for me to find here. And this gold chart actually does that for you. You find tops, bottoms, smooth areas. You find the same price as I spoke about, with today being 314 ounces of gold to buy the average house in 1986. In June of 1986, you would have used the same 314 ounces of gold to buy a house. And so this one, I just went back to June of 1969. You're gonna get your high here. In 1970, it took 1,008 ounces of gold to buy a house. So anytime that you would get this high, you'd be like, this is probably not the right time to be buying a house. You'd rather own gold. Because then if you had the gold, you're looking only a few years later here and you're under 250 ounces and you could have bought 4 houses instead of 1 house and you're less than 5 years later. So you can see it just gives you an indication of, hey, no, was this the perfect time to buy here? No, like you could have done better here another 5 or 6 years later, but it at least gives you some movement here in the chart to sort of say, okay, these are better times, these are worse times. And what's really interesting when you get to kind of the range we've been in here for the last 10 years, looking at the last 10 years, you'd go to September of 2011 would have been the time where houses were the cheapest in comparison to gold. So it only took 139 ounces of gold to buy a house. So you'd be like, that was brilliant. And I think anyone thinking right now would go, I wish I had bought a house 10, 11 years ago. That was definitely good timing. And what's really interesting are 314 ounces of gold today in 2022 that we've just hit is the highest we've seen since that 2011 mark. So not only have interest rates moved up here, which is making houses more expensive, but gold prices has dropped. So relative, gold prices have dropped faster than houses. So relatively, houses are going up in value in comparison to gold. What I have kind of said and looked at from the past, like anything under 250 is like a no-brainer. Like buy it, you're really smart. And that is this line right here. In 2020, you can see here, we took a good dip below that. So 2020, it took 194 ounces of gold to buy the average house. And I think anyone that bought a house at that time in September of 2020 is looking pretty smart today. And I think they will look smart for a long time, not only because of the things that were going on and interest rates being really low, but again, just looking at this gold to house price ratio, you're seeing that that was really smart. So I would look at that 400 ounces of gold to buy a house as that level where I start to question, is this really a good idea for me to buy a house? I would really be looking a lot deeper and really making sure that I'm getting myself into a house that makes a lot of sense for a long time and that sort of thing. So after 400, my next level I would look at is over, once you hit 600 ounces of gold to purchase a home, anything over that 600, I would only buy a house if I was somehow getting a fantastic deal. I was desperate and I needed it. I would be in a spot of being very, very cautious and advising people to really think, hey, this may not be a great time to buy a house. So remember, right now we're at 314 an ounce. 314 ounces to purchase the home is the correct way to say it there. We're not what I would consider those super steal levels that's under 250. We hit these same levels in 2018. We were 304. I think it's a similar time to buy as 2018. Not that it's going to move exactly the same way, but we're in a similar place. And so it's not the killer steal, but it's definitely not over that 400 or 600. So you're definitely making a good decision where, hey, if I'm going to live here for 3 to 5 years, I'd really like to see 5 years. This is going to end up being a good purchase that's going to play out well for me. So those are the levels again I'd look at: 250, 400, 600. We're currently at 314. So that should make that part really clear. So the part I want to jump to here is just comparing 2022 to 1986, which is an interesting comparison because, again, it took 314 ounces of gold to buy the average house in 2022, and it was the exact same in 1986. So what I did with those 2 years was then dig deeper into San Diego County specifically, because this is more of a nationwide look. So if you go back to 1986, the median house price in San Diego County was $131,400. So the same amount of gold. Today, our median house price, I just pulled the median sale from the month of June. I've seen months where we've been over $1 million. The median one in June, kind of looking at everything, was $910,000. So $910,000 today is the same thing as $131,000 back in 1986, and that's because of how much inflation we've seen in that time. The gold, again, smooths that out and gets rid of that. In 1986, the average interest rate you were looking at on a 30-year fix was 10.68%. Today, you're about 5.5%. That house in San Diego for $131,000 is actually 368 ounces of gold, whereas ours here today at $910,000 is actually 535 ounces of gold. So what it tells us is the San Diego market has outperformed the rest of the country significantly since 1986. So our prices are higher relative to what we saw in 1986. And I mean, that just makes a lot of sense. The growth of San Diego, where we are, what we are. And so you're paying a premium compared to the rest of the country. That's not breaking news to anybody, but that just gives you something to compare it to. And I like that framework. If you bought in 1986, you're looking really happy moving forward. And I think you would see the same thing again here in 2022. So I hope you found my chart here that I love really helpful. Some of that information comparing 1986 to 2022 really helpful. That's really what we're here to do, is just help advise you, get you as much information as possible about buying a house. Typically focus more on the finance side, so helping you understand that monthly payment, how much cash you need to bring in to close, those sorts of things. But we want to be an advisor to you. We want to help you win at home ownership. We want to put your family in the best situation possible. If you're looking to buy a house, you're thinking about refinancing, you're thinking about investing in real estate, reach out to us. We'd love to just start that conversation with you, help you with some numbers, and we really look forward to talking to you.